Here we go, folks. We are talking about Vancouver Canucks center targets and the one guy whose name has been discussed at length. No, it's not Marco Rossi. Sorry. Today we're talking about Mason McTavish, and not necessarily any sort of an update in regards to McTavish in Vancouver, but more so a discussion that was brought up on Sekeres and Price as to where the value really lies, and which assets the Vancouver Canucks could hypothetically send over to Anaheim to make a McTavish deal more likely. Now, you already know from the title and from the thumbnail, today we're talking about two Swedes, two Swedish D-men. How sweet it is, folks, because today we are talking about Elias Pettersson, not Elias Pettersson, Elias, and Tom Willander over here. Two Vancouver Canucks prospects with very different progressions and very different stories heading into the 2025-2026 season. Now, Tom Willander is the first round pick that the Vancouver Canucks had in 2023, 11th overall. He's a player that some folks are projecting to being the next Charlie McAvoy. Craig Button had some very high praise for Willander. There are a whole bunch of other analysts and scouts that have nothing but good things to say about this dude. Maybe he's not the next Quinn Hughes. Maybe he is not the next offensive dynamo, power play quarterback type of guy. But as an all-round, defensively capable, responsible, minutes-eating projection long-term, Tom Willander has a lot of upside in that respect. Now, Elias Pettersson, on the other hand, is more of a defensive, snarly, physical guy who has a really booming slap shot and who came relatively out of nowhere compared to Willander. Where Willander was a first-round pick, Elias Pettersson was a third-round pick, and a guy who inevitably went down that same Alex Edler path from being a middle-round guy to working his way into the NHL lineup. Elias Pettersson, I'd say, plays kind of similarly to Alex Edler, which is really interesting. He had 3 points in 28 games the most previous season. Yes, that number is not amazing, but still, the fact is this guy was one of the most competent Canucks defensemen in the previous season, and he was so good that Vancouver didn't even want to send him down to Abbotsford to play in their Calder Cup playoff run, which they were still able to win even without Elias Pettersson. The reason for the discussion today is a clip posted by Sekeres and Price on Twitter that asks whether or not it would be more expensive to go out there and get a 2C with Willander or Pettersson. Who is the bigger trade chip? The question goes out there and asks. And the clip features Frank Corrado, Sekeres, and Price all going out there and giving their opinions. The clip was posted yesterday, and you can see the three go out there and talk about it. And the reason I think this opens the door to a McTavish conversation is because if you're talking about D-men, you're talking about the most valuable prospects in the system, these are probably the assets that you're looking at in some sort of a trade to bring in a bona fide second-line C. And McTavish is one of the guys that I think a lot of Canucks fans have been talking about. This article on CanucksDaily.com is a good one because it goes out there and transcribes a lot of what was talked about on this Sekeres and Price clip. So what we're going to do is we're going to read it, we're going to react to it, we're going to respond. I'm going to give my thoughts, and you can give your thoughts in the comments section. Edward Jackson published this article earlier this morning, so we'll leave a link in the description to this if you wanted to read this on your own time. But of course, the reason we are reading it is because of the transcription here. Earlier this week, Matt Sekeres and Blake Price of Sekeres and Price wondered if the Vancouver Canucks would have to move on from someone like Elias Pettersson to land a player like Mason McTavish, a legit second-line centerman who is young and can help the club for many years to come. Price went out there and asked, would you trade that kind of left-shot defenseman for a surefire? And I think he is a surefire second-line center in Mason McTavish? I think the answer is yes. You do trade that guy, Price said. Sekeres then added, Like, if you're going to sit here and tell me that Elias Pettersson turns into Jacob Slavin, then that would give me pause, because that's one of the best defensive defensemen on the planet, and a very, very valuable piece. But if he falls short of that, I think J-Fresh has it mostly right. That's a second-pairing guy. He is still a valuable piece, particularly with the physicality that he plays with, the energy that he plays with, but that's not as valuable as a second-line center. While Elias Pettersson could net the Vancouver Canucks a decent asset to help right now, former defenseman Frank Corrado believes that another Swedish prospect, Tom Willander, is the bigger trade chip of the two. I still would think it's Willander, Corrado said. I still would think the higher-end upside for what he can be. Right-handed shot. I think that's a harder commodity to come by. But you have to keep in mind, too, you have Mancini. But at the same time, you don't just move a guy just to move a guy because you think the other player is going to be an insurance policy. Like, if this organization ever decided they were going to move Willander, I would say the return has to be so astronomical at this point because you just don't know what Willander could be. He could be a 15-year, 25-minute-per-game stud on both sides of the puck, and you just don't know that yet. So that's why maybe you could get the most, but that's also why you would have to get something astronomical to do it. And you just have to go out there and ask, is Mason McTavish an astronomical enough price? I'm thinking about it like this. The Anaheim Ducks would go out there and match as much as they could in terms of an offer sheet. They would probably require the moon and the stars to move on from Mason McTavish. I mean, he was a third overall pick just a few years ago. There's tremendous value long-term with this guy. 22 years old, coming off of a 52-point season in 76 games. Sure, you can question whether or not there's a spot for McTavish on this team, but you can't deny the potential that does exist. And so, for Anaheim, they might be going out there and demanding an astronomical price. And Tom Willander, because he has that potential, because he is a really young and up-and-coming right-handed defenseman who can be, let's say, some sort of a McAvoy type, there is so much that you can look forward to. This guy could potentially be the true bona fide top right-handed defenseman on the Vancouver Canucks over Filip Hronek if Quinn Hughes decides to stay. Willander and Hughes will be one of the top pairings in the league, in my opinion. Top 3, top 4 pairing in the NHL. I mean, only very few could come in between them. And Willander just has so much hype that you would have to think his value is a little bit higher than Elias Pettersson. Here's what I'm thinking. Of course, it's a big meme that Elias Pettersson even exists on the Vancouver Canucks, that he's on this team with Elias and Marcus, so obviously Canucks fans want to keep him. But if Elias Pettersson is all that it takes to get McTavish, I seriously think about it, honestly. Like, there are already enough Canucks defensemen that you could move on from a DPD, even though he is so valuable and he is so young and he is so fun to watch. You already have other names that are knocking on the doorstep of this decor. Derek Forbort's been brought back. You have Willander. You have Mancini. You have all of these names. I think it makes it a little bit easier to shell away one of them. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below when it comes to a Mason McTavish trade. Do you think about trading away Elias Pettersson? Are you more inclined to think about trading Tom Willander? Do you go with the preference of a right-handed guy in Willander instead of DPD? And does that change your perspective on whether or not a McTavish trade is really an achievable thing here for the Vancouver Canucks? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The article with the Sakaris and Price clip will be linked in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.